we're delighted to see you all. And at a time when America's energy costs are tied to the whims of dictators like Vladimir Putin, our hearing today will explore how our nation can promote American energy security by facilitating investments in innovation and, among other things, climate solutions. To help inform our conversation today, we'll be hearing from a panel of expert witnesses who are joining us in person and remotely. And we welcome you. We thank you for your willingness to participate in what I believe is an important conversation and, frankly, a very timely conversation. I believe it was Winston Churchill who said, "The further back we look, the further forward we can see." Think about that. The further back we look, the further forward we can see. And when we look to find solutions for rising fossil fuel prices here and around the world, it's helpful, I think, to look back at history for some help on those answers. Since the Arab oil embargo of 1973, many in Washington have argued that if we just drill for more oil, we could be free of the price whiplash caused by international disruptions in the global oil market. That wasn't true during the Arab oil embargo, and it hasn't, and it isn't true today. This narrative clings to the hope, I think a false hope, that the oil market in the United States is somehow separate from the global oil market, and as some of us on this committee know better than me, that's not true. They're not separate. So let's lay out some facts. And one of those is the oil and gas industry has been slow to ramp up production on the more than 9,000 unused approved permits that they hold on to drill onshore. Is it onshore and offshore? Just onshore. 9,000. I didn't realize that. 9,000 unused approved permits to drill onshore. I had my staff double check that, and apparently that's actually true. Now, after experiencing falling revenues during the pandemic, many in the industry are more interested in paying back their shareholders, it seems, than taking action to lower gas prices. High gas prices are not a result of this administration's policy. Still, the U.S. is, I'm told, a net exporter of oil products and is drilling more today than we were a year ago. Our nation is on track to surpass our historic pre-pandemic levels of oil production in the next year. And despite this increased oil production, American energy prices continue to be directly tied to global events, such as Vladimir Putin's unprovoked invasion of the Ukraine and the pandemic. In fact, prices at the pump have spiked nearly $1 since Putin moved his forces into Ukraine. As long as our economy runs mostly on fossil fuels, energy prices will continue to be vulnerable to forces outside the United States. And that's not energy security. For many families, it means energy insecurity. Let me just say right here at the outset, that we're not going to switch to electric vehicles overnight, or in a year, or 2, or 5 years, or a decade. As much as I believe in using hydrogen to help provide propulsion for our vehicles in the future, we're going to be driving vehicles that use liquid fuels for a long time. I would acknowledge that, and that's the reality that we live with. But having said that, our over-reliance on fossil fuels is also driving another existential threat, and that is climate change. Just last month, a study by the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, highlighted the alarming rates of sea level rise due to climate change. For people who live on the inland in the U.S. and in the heartland of our country, they don't have to worry about this as much. Those of us who live on the coast, and I think it's about somewhere half the people in the United States live within like 50 miles of one of our coasts. For us, this is real and a matter of ongoing concern. But anyway, NOAA estimated in the report last month that our oceans will rise as much as a foot in the next 30 years without action. That's more than they've gone up in the last 100 years. So it's a trend that's going to continue, and if we don't do something about it, it's only going to make it worse. If you happen to live near a coast, that's a matter of real concern for us and for our families. Increased sea level rise is just one challenge of many that Americans will face and already are facing because of climate change. Climate economic costs are starting to add up, according to GAO Governmental Accountability Office. The economic impacts that Americans are experiencing from the Russian invasion of the Ukraine pale in comparison to the economic devastation we look forward to if we fail to properly address the climate crisis. So instead of doubling down on an antiquated energy playbook that doesn't work well anymore. We need policies that help our economy smoothly transition toward cleaner, American-made energy. Now, here's some good news. And what is this? It's a scenario that's not always good news. Here's some good news. We can adopt these policies that I'm talking about while also giving consumers more choices to fuel their lives. And by giving Americans a choice about how to heat their homes and fuel their vehicles, we can reduce price volatility, we can reduce energy costs for all Americans. Fortunately, Congress and President Biden have already taken steps to relieve the pressure that high energy prices are putting on families and small businesses, thanks in large part to our successful passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I would just say to our witnesses today, this is the committee that provided the foundation on which the bipartisan infrastructure law was built, and very proud of our colleagues. But thanks in large part to the successful package of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Biden administration is able, frankly, to make some significant investments, many significant investments across the country, from sea to shining sea, and expanding domestic clean energy and infrastructure for zero-emitting vehicles. These investments include $5 billion for a national network of electric vehicle chargers. They also include over $3 billion in the domestic battery supply chain and battery recycling. So U.S. electric vehicle manufacturing does not depend on critical minerals from China or countries like countries in Africa. And while these investments represent real progress, we can and must do more if we're going to meet our energy security and our climate goals. This is the challenge of our time. Most of us on this committee are married, I think maybe all of us, and our spouses say things to us over and over again, and we do the same with them. But one of the things my wife tells me is I'm too much of an optimist. She said I need to be more of a realist like her. And I always say, honey, I love you, but I don't want to be just like you. I want to be an optimist. And she says, she rolls her eyes and says, oh, well, what did she marry me for better, for worse? There you go. But while fossil fuels will continue to power more of the U.S. economy for years to come, many American businesses are already making investments toward a cleaner, more secure energy future. I think they need our encouragement and support to go not slower, but to go faster. And with that, there are three things we can do to accelerate our transition to clean energy transition. First, we should help ensure that Americans have the choice to fuel their vehicles with electricity from renewable and nuclear energy, from biofuels from our farmers, or clean hydrogen produced by our refineries rather than oil from foreign countries. We can do this through direct investments in clean vehicles and their refueling infrastructure. Second, we must ensure that all Americans benefit from our investments in clean energy and energy efficiency. More often than not, lower energy families use a large portion of their household income on energy costs. We need to ensure that low-income communities have access to clean technologies and that no community is left behind in transition of clean energy. The Marines have a saying, as Dan Sullivan knows, goes something like this: leave no Marine behind. Leave no Marine behind. I think we have a moral obligation to leave no community behind in our energy transition. As my colleagues know on this committee, I was born in West Virginia. Our neighbors were, for the most part, all coal miners, and those jobs are gone. And we have, I think, a moral obligation is when people lose their livelihood to help them transition to something new so they can support themselves and their families and leave no family behind. But finally, we must redouble our efforts to improve energy efficiency and reduce waste. For example, the oil and gas industry should no longer be able to allow large amounts of our nation's supply of natural gas to escape into the air as methane, harming our lungs and climate just because it's inconvenient to capture that methane. Encouraging greater energy efficiency in our homes, our federal buildings, and our manufacturing facilities lowers costs and saves energy. That's a win-win situation where I come from. If we make these investments, I firmly believe we can break our addiction to foreign oil. We need to. Also to reduce harmful climate emissions and lower consumer costs. It's a hat trick where I come from. That's a hat trick. At the same time, we can strengthen our national security and create good-paying jobs across our country. That's the promise of a clean energy future. In closing, As one of the strongest supporters of electric vehicles in the Senate, I know it's important to remember that we are not yet in a post-liquid fuel world. I sold last year for $1 my 2001 Chrysler Town and Country minivan that had 600,000 miles on it. There's not many people get 600,000 miles out of their car or minivan, but I did. And there's a lot of people that have vehicles on the road that maybe have 50,000 miles or 100,000, and they're going to be driving. They're going to be driving those vehicles like I did for a long time. That's just the reality of what we face. But we must retain our domestic capabilities to produce and refine the motor vehicle fuels that help power our lives and will continue to for some time to come. However, we must also ensure these fuels are as clean as possible while investing in zero-emitting vehicles. Investments in clean energy and energy efficiency are the greatest long-term solutions for energy security domestically and internationally. The United States is at our best when we lead, and now is our opportunity to do so by passing legislation that unleashes the potential of American clean energies, provides a lot of jobs going forward, and benefits all Americans. With that saying, we look forward to hearing from all of you, and now to hear from our ranking member, Senator Capito, for her opening statement.